I can understand, I can maybe relate to that, or maybe I can't relate to that, but I can also listen and try to empathize in those situations and say, what can I do to support you? All I wanted to do was make $1 million. That's it. That money was the motivating factor. The sooner I could get out of college, the sooner I could get a job, the sooner I could get a paycheck, I was going to start that journey. You have to set personal goals for yourself, and they don't have to be financial goals. They could be, health goals, right?
Dalen, I'm so excited to be diving in with you today. I kind of think back, we've known each other for a few years now, and I'm thinking back to, I can remember when we first had our conversation, kind of an intro of getting to know each other a little bit. And in that, you were in the middle of a transition in part of your journey, right? And you told me your story, and I'm just excited to work through a little bit of that with you today, and in the end, get to your definition of success, which is, why we're on the Engineered Success podcast, talking through what that means for you and your journey. So, but before we get to that, I want to take a step back and really dive into, your childhood, kind of how did this journey start for you, Dalen?
Yeah, that's a great question. It was a very unique start to the journey. I grew up in a extremely poor family. My dad wasn't around a lot. He was a pretty severe alcoholic. So I really didn't have a father figure around as much as I should have. My mother had a very bad chemical imbalance. And back then, mental health wasn't talked about as much as it is today. So growing up, what I can remember, and I tried to hide a lot of that over the years, to be honest with you, and work has kind of been my therapy to mask a lot of that. But it was tough. I remember some of my earliest memories of going to a church and getting food stamps. That was some things I remember, or the car not starting and being late for school because we always had cars that just weren't reliable. Going to the gas station and my mom getting gas and having to pay for that would change. And, and my mom did the best she could. She did the best she could on terms of trying to make life normal. On the Friday night, we'd go to get a movie, and that's when you could actually rent VHSs, and that was at gas stations. And we'd get popcorn, and we'd get, red vine licorice. And but I just remember at an early age watching her pay for all those things would change. And the people behind us being so impatient, everybody's so busy, and it's such in a rush, and seeing their looks on their faces. So those are the kind of memories that I've had in my earlier childhood. But those memories also have made me who I am today.
Yeah, definitely. And I can bet that some of those opportunities that you had, those experiences really taught you some skills that, later in life, you're like, oh, I wish I didn't learn them maybe in that way, but I'm glad that I have them. Curious to dive a little bit deeper. You mentioned a little bit about your parents, and thanks for sharing some of that. Tell me a little bit about the rest of the family. Like, where were you located? Were you in Michigan? Did you have brothers and sisters? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I have an older sister, Amber, and then I have a younger sister, Angel, and we grew up in Ferrysburg.
Okay.
There's a trailer park there close to Lake Michigan. So I lived there until 7th grade. And so after 7th grade, we moved to Spring Lake. So I spent a lot of my early childhood in a trailer park, which, to be honest with you, was probably one of the most positive experiences because you always have a lot of kids to play with. And so there was never a time where you couldn't find somebody that wanted to ride bikes or do something. So that was probably one of the better experiences. Or, when it got hot out, North Shore Beach is right down the road. So you could get on a bike, you could walk right to the beach. So those are some of the more positive experiences I had when I was younger.
Yeah, able to spend time outdoors, build relationships with, some of the friends. Now, did you go to Ferrysburg schools as well, or where'd you go to school?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So my grandparents were very big parishioners at St. Mary's Catholic School. And so they were very adamant about us getting a Catholic education and going through that process. So I always find this very funny joke that I have, but whenever I go to school somewhere, all the way from elementary school, I've always probably been the poorest kid in those situations all the way up to college. And so it was very interesting when the bus came to pick us up at the trailer park and kids are like, oh, you live in there? It's like, but at an early age, that's all normal, that's fine. Yeah, that's where I live, type of thing. So you ended up having to answer a lot of questions at an early age that you don't understand why you're answering.
Mm. Yeah, I could definitely see that, and how that's, maybe put a little bit of a pep in your step. And, I've had some of these conversations, and that's probably fueled some of your rest of your journey as you dove into the next phases of life. So take me beyond, the time you spent at the trailer park in Ferrisburg. You're growing up, you're getting into the college years. Kind of, what did that look like for Dalen?
Yeah, I mean, when you say fuel, it's fuel. It's not 87 octane, it's rocket fuel. I mean, that has been the driving factor in my career, all the way from college to essentially where I am today. It's something that I do think about on a regular basis, even in terms of going to the gas station. That's something that, I don't take very lightly. I always fill up my gas tank, but when I'm pumping gas, those earlier childhood memories still resonate every single time, believe it or not. And so, but even through college, I wanted to graduate as quickly as possible. I made sure I graduated in 4 years. I had a job lined up before I even graduated. All I wanted to do was make $1 million. That's it. That money was the motivating factor. The sooner I could get out of college, the sooner I could get a job, the sooner I could get a paycheck, I was going to start that journey, and as quickly, as fast, and work as hard as I possibly could.
So you had an early external motivator of money, and that probably came from some of your past, right?
Yes.
And then wanting to find a solution for that. What were some of the early ways? You said you wanted to get a job, or you had a job lined up and you wanted to get that $1 million. What are some of the ways that you worked at early on to get that financial kind of success?
Yeah. Well, I've always worked. I remember my first job, my first W-2 job was at Lepping's in Ferrisburg, Lepping's grocery store. And I would go in there after football practice. My dad would have to drive me because I didn't have a license. I think at that time you could get a job at 14 years old. So I would get done with football and he would drive me there, and I'd work till they closed, and I'd go home and I'd do my homework. But I don't remember a time in my life since 14 that I didn't have some sort of job. So that was always, even prior to graduating college and really wanting to go out there and make good money, I always was money driven, motivated, and it didn't matter if I had to shovel ditches. It didn't matter if I had to cut grass. I always wanted to have some kind of income stream coming in. And in my mind, that was stability, even at an earlier age.
Yeah. Stability. And when you're 14, it's sometimes hard to get up and, work that job when you've got school and things like that going on as well. When you think back, like, what, you mentioned money, but what got you up? What got you to perform at that job? What were some of the things that you look back and you're like, that's something, a mindset that I had that pushed me into, achieving at that level?
Yeah. I think that, essentially when you grow up as poor as we did, it can be a cycle. And so I think that subconsciously, I earlier on wanted to break that cycle. I didn't want to go through the trials and essentially tribulations that my parents went through that I saw on a daily basis. And it really was a daily basis. And so that was kind of the mindset, the motivation factor, and really the philosophy behind working at an early age and having that motivation to go out there. And I can't say that I was very good at saving back then, because as you're getting into your teenage years, you wanted a car and you wanted to get gas and you wanted to go out with your friends. So that was one of those situations where, you probably weren't financially smart in your journey at that point, but you also had money coming in, which was better than nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, as you're looking at that earlier path that you took, your journey, and what I've realized is that there's some of these things at each different stage or season that we're in where we're making decisions. We could go left or we could go right. And when we look back, we're like, wow, I'm really glad that I went right versus left. Were there any phases or forks in the road when you look back at those years that you're like, I'm glad that I took that route and didn't go this one?
Yeah. Well, once again, a great question. I think that the routes that I've taken, I'm very happy that I've taken. Not saying that they were always the right path or the right decisions, but I've learned from everything, good or bad. I've taken it and tried to really develop and understand. Do I look back and say, should I have veered right when I veered left? Absolutely. I still have that to this day. I still have things I look back on and say, you know what, you really probably should have turned around and went backwards, to be honest with you, instead of going right or left. But once again, that makes us who we are as a person. And I think, everybody's journey, everybody's backstory is different. And that's what makes us extremely unique individuals, really.
So you're 14, working at Leppings, kind of doing the hustle. You're working hard. Obviously, you have a thing about you that you always need to be working, and
Yep.
you've definitely proven that over the years and over your journey. But even at a young age, now, was there anyone in your life, either at Leppings or in your family, that you would look back at and say, like, hey, they were someone that I went to at that age, that was a mentor or someone that could kind of guide you in a direction? You were learning about how to deal with money at that point. Was there anyone like that in your life at that age?
To be honest with you, no.
Yeah.
I really haven't. It's very interesting to look back, and I've seen so many bad choices, within my family, but really outside of my family as well. I always had a keen knack of realizing that this isn't right. It doesn't look right. It doesn't smell right. It doesn't feel right. And saying, maybe you should really analyze the situation. Perfect example. And to this day, I'm extremely proud, in terms of credit card debt, right? I have credit cards. I use them for my advantage, reward points, cash back, but they're paid off at the end of the month. I got my first credit card in college. And I think a lot of people that are younger get credit cards because you go to college, you go to universities, and what's the first thing you see? All those booths, right? Sign up for a credit card, $1,500, $500. And you're thinking, well, free money, free money. Even at that point, I knew when I graduated, I needed a credit score, and I think that's one thing that I saw my family struggle in terms of getting a new vehicle. We never had new vehicles. We never had stable vehicles. Every vehicle we've ever owned growing up was something that broke down consistently. And so it was one of those situations where, looking back at it, I literally looked at every one of those situations, analyzed, and said, you know what, I'm going to do something different. And really, I'm so proud that I did. And I used my credit card very sparingly or sparsely in college, but I always paid it off. And by the time I graduated college, I had a decent credit score. And in this world today, that means everything,
100%. And you were able to take what you experienced, what you saw around you, and said, hey, this doesn't really seem like I want my future to look like. So you had to take that intentionality, you had to engineer that part of your journey of saying, I am not going to go into credit card debt because I know that this is going to affect my future. And I love that intentionality as part of it. Now, as you think through, were there any big aha moments, college years, things like that, where you got into something that happened, you're like, this clicks, this excites me, this is what I want my future to look like, that as you lean towards and into your journey of success?
I wish at an early age I would have had more of those aha moments, or really those, the bulb went off, right? And this is the path, and it's so clear. I can't say that I've really had those at an early age, and I really didn't have those until I was probably in my early to mid 30s. And so, in really the two aha moments that really affected me the most, that I live on today, were, one of them was my daughter being born. So my daughter was born in 2015, and I remember me and my wife, we just built a brand new house in Grand Haven Township, and we were sitting there, and my wife, this is kind of a funny story. She woke up and said, I think I wet the bed. And I'm like, that's hilarious, right? So, and she said, yeah, and I was kind of razzing her about it. But long story short, I go to work, and she goes to work. She's a teacher. And she calls me and said, hey, I called the doctor. Anything weird happens, they want you to call. She said, doctor said, come in, right? And at the time we were with a North Ottawa Community Hospital in Grand Haven. She said, can you meet me there? It's like 9 a.m. Yep, meet you there. So we go there, and it wasn't that she wet the bed. It was her amniotic fluid broke. right? And we're like 2 months, from full term here. So that's scary, right? And so the lady was like, hey, we did all the tests, amniotic fluid. We are not set up for this type of situation. You're going to have to go to Helen DeVos Children's Hospital. And I said, okay, being naive, I said, okay, I'll go home and I'll pack stuff because we didn't have anything packed. She said, no, you don't understand. There'll be an ambulance here in 5 minutes. You're going to Grand Rapids. Okay, so we went to Grand Rapids, got there, and those people are absolutely phenomenal. But long story short, my daughter was born on a Wednesday, premature, emergency C-section, and she ended up having to be there for, I believe, close to a month. So that was a Wednesday. I was back to work on Friday. It was the end of the month, reporting was due, final numbers were due, figures. And so that was an aha moment for me, not then, but later on down my journey, is saying, this beautiful moment, your first child, and this is something I have to live with, and I think about all the time, was born, and you didn't even take time to really fully appreciate how special that was, because you were so dedicated to your work. And so that's something I have to live with the rest of my life, but also it is really kind of focused and motivated me to be a better father and really make sure that I'm spending the quality time with my kids while they're still in my house. The other aha moment was my father passed away at 64. Pretty unexpectedly, to be honest with you. But as you're analyzing those situations, I realized that in the last 10 years, as I'm building my career, I have spent less than 10 times with him, just one-on-one, going out to dinner, sitting there, really just having a one-on-one conversation, just us. And really, that was a aha moment. And those two combined, something needed to change. And so those two events that happened, I think really changed the trajectory of where I was going, what I was doing, and really what was a priority in my life.
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I definitely can see that as your story progresses and as we dive into it more, how you've gone through and you had that original chip on your shoulder with finances, right? I need to get that $1 million. I need to race towards that. And that's what you saw the level of success doing. And then you had these other events that happened in your life with family, your father and your daughter as well. And just understanding like, hey, there is a balance. There is, maybe a focus shift that needs to happen here. Thinking a little bit about, and again, thanks for sharing that part of your story and those ahas. Like, was there anything else in your journey up until this moment that you would say, like, man, that's the biggest challenge that I've faced or I've had to come to grips with, either professionally or personally?
Yeah, I think I've had a lot of challenges over the years. I think that, some of those challenges I brought on myself, type of thing. And, I'm always my own worst critic. And, you hold yourself accountable, which is sometimes good, really. And that's the motivating factor and the push. But, I've been a people manager for most of my career, and I've managed people. And the challenge of managing people is to really understand that not everybody is going to be you. Not everybody is going to work as hard as you, as long as you. They're not going to be motivated by the same things. And some people might not be motivated by monetary possessions or whatever it might be. And that was the hardest challenge of really realizing that I, earlier on in my career, have probably failed more than I've been successful as a manager. I'm glad I know that now because I feel like I'm starting to really hone my skills. But I push people to the point where their skill level or even their drive level didn't warrant the amount of pushing, right? I heard a gentleman say one time, chopping wood. And I said to him, not everybody is going to chop wood as hard and as fast as you. But we have to work with those. We have to work with what they have been given and where they're at in their journey. And I think that is where empathy comes in. So really the challenge has been to understand that not everybody is the same, right? They're not going to be motivated as hard and work hard and stay up till 11 o'clock at night. And that's okay. Not everybody has to do that. Not everybody's motivated by that. But earlier on in my career, I can look back and say that I push people too hard. I have perfect examples that I think about to this day when things get tough in a managerial situation, that is what comes to my mind. How did you handle it back then? How are you going to handle it now? And to make sure that you're affecting that person emotionally, psychologically, to be honest with you, and making sure that no matter what happens, you can look back and say, you did it the right way. You didn't do it in a way that you were expecting something that really couldn't be there anyway. And how are we going to move forward from this?
Sounds like incredible growth, Dalen, and like your journey of how you managed people. Do you feel like your experience with your daughter and your family kind of took that approach and changed it with management? Like, did your family play an
100%.
impact to that? Okay.
100%. I mean, I have a perfect example. My son is a spitting image of me. When they say that you're a product of your environment, I believe that. I'm a perfect example of that, but I do think there's a lot in genetics. I see my son, and my son, Miles, is amazing. 6 years old. He's always, been just an amazing kid, a good friend, a good listener. But he has those moments where, adverse situations happen and he doesn't handle them very well, right? And so my job is to really calm him down. Nobody did that for me. Nobody said, hey, take a deep breath, press pause, right? It's not that big of a deal. I have a tennis ball. When things get real tough, I keep tennis balls, one in my car. I keep one in my office. I try to have it with me at all times to say, you know what, squeeze that tennis ball, get that tension out of there. And so he sees that now. And he even said, Dad, this morning, he's like, he was getting mad. His sister was teasing him about something. I said, it's not that big deal. Just let it go, right? Here's the tennis ball, So I do believe that the things that I've experienced, not only in my journey in life personally, with family growing up, but really in the business sense, has made me at this point be the father that I always knew I could be, but the father that I was missing, right? To say, hey, we're better than this, right? It's not that big of a deal. This isn't the hill we're going to die on, but, kind of thing. And so now at 6 years old, I'm able to hopefully hone him in to get him ready for those real challenges, right? And understand that at the end of the day, we're going to survive this, right? There's always tomorrow. The sun's going to come up and the sun is going to set. But at the end of the day, it's how we hold ourselves accountable. It's how we treat others, and really how we manage those adverse situations to get the best possible outcomes that we can expect.
Yeah, not every day is going to be sunshine and roses, right? It's going to be a struggle. It's going to be a journey. And you've experienced that. You've experienced those struggles from childhood as well as, into when your family first started and some of those first jobs. You've experienced that. So when you talk to your son, you're talking with that passion of like, hey, yes, I've been here. I've experienced it. Here's some things and some tactics and some ways with the tennis ball of overcoming those. What are some other, things that you've been able to get yourself changing your mindset or getting yourself into the right philosophy when you're attacking problems throughout the day today that you've been able to, habits or other things that you've been able to develop?
Yeah, well, one of the hardest things in my life that I've really been working on, and this is going to be a lifelong journey, is you don't have to respond right away, right? I think that in the business world, just in general, as Americans in our society, we want instant gratification. We want to respond quickly. We want to respond to that email. We want to, answer that text message. And there's some times where you just have to sit back and say, you know what? I need more clarity. I need more context, right? I need to ask a few more questions to really understand. And especially being a manager and a people manager, I think that's one area that I've gotten a lot better at, but I'm nowhere near where I want to be or I need to be. And it's going to be a lifelong journey, but really pressing pause and realizing that it's okay not to respond. It's okay to go to sleep at night and think about it and see if your rationale has changed in that time period. And if it hasn't, then go ahead and respond. Or maybe it's okay to have somebody really read that email to make sure. And I've sent those emails. I think a lot of people have sent those emails where they're like, oh, I shouldn't have sent that email, right? It was all emotion based. And so I think that, growing up, everything was emotion based. Everything was fight. There wasn't a lot of flight there. There's no nowhere to fly to get away from it. So you're already pre-programming yourself in early childhood to take on head on any situation. And really, to be honest with you, it doesn't work. It really doesn't work. And I can honestly say that.
Yeah, and you've taken some of that, you said pre-programming, but those experiences and the natural tendency that you had for the approach of problem solving is like, I'm going to solve this problem, I'm going to take care of it right now. And you've had to be intentional again about taking a step back, putting people in your life to help you read emails for you, filter. Sometimes it's like you've learned, hey, I need to approach this differently. And so you've set up specific things in your life to try and improve, right? No one's perfect, but you know yourself. So you know how to protect the next steps of the process. I love even sleeping on things. I've tried to do better, putting that email in draft and, even I'll reply and I'll say, hey, got your message. I'm going to send you an email in the morning or something. So they're not like, hey, he's ignoring me. Sometimes I've jumped in those situations and then thought about the full response and sent it the next day. And I'm like, wow, I'm really glad that I sat on that one. Cause now even I thought about a new piece of information I had to dive deeper into, which gave me clarity on their perspective, which is, I'm glad I didn't send that now.
Yeah.
Do you have some specific examples, and feel free to share to pass specific examples of maybe some times when you're like, man, I maybe jumped the gun on that decision or on that response, and I probably should have paused a little bit more.
Yeah. No, I mean, that could be a 4-part series, to be honest with you, Stephen. Definitely specific examples, especially in my line of work, is, you work for these large organizations, multi-billion-dollar organizations, and some of the people that you work with, you can't walk from one office to another office and ask those face to face. And so a lot of times you're working with people in, California or out west or, the Carolinas, or it could be anywhere, Texas. And so you expect to get a response right away, or when you get a response, it might not be the answer you're looking for, but you also haven't jumped in to understand and have empathy around what the context was, right? I think that we, as human nature, unfortunately, we sometimes are generated or magnetized towards maybe a negative. Did that person really mean that? Or I can't believe how they worded that. And really, they're looking at it and saying, I didn't mean anything by it. I think that happens all the time with text, right? That's why I like to do phone calls, right? Mm-hmm. So if there's ever a tough situation, what I recommend is pick up the phone. Don't text, don't email. I've learned that the hard way. But those are examples of, why didn't this person get back to me? Well, you find out that, their mother, had a stroke and they didn't have time to do an out-of-office reply, and they've been gone for 3 days, and they should be focusing on their mother, which they were, but you didn't know that. So you jumped to those conclusions. Or sales reps. I've had a lot of sales reps over the years, and you see numbers kind of dwindling, and you're like, oh, this is out of character. Is this person not working? You always jump to those conclusions of, are they looking for a new job, or, are they just, kind of quietly quitting or whatever. You don't go to the point where you should and say, hey, what's going on? Are you okay? This isn't like you, right? And, then XYZ is happening in my life. Okay, I didn't know. I can understand. I can maybe relate to that, or maybe I can't relate to that, but I can also listen and try to empathize in those situations and say, what can I do to support you? So those are the situations that I've had over the years that if I could look back and change those, I probably have 1,000 of those examples that I would have changed, but I can't change them. They're in the past. Only thing I can do is look at it and say, you know what? If you are going to be the best leader, if you are going to be the person that people come to and they feel safe and comfortable with, these are areas that you need to focus on. These are areas that you need to improve on, and make sure that you aren't repeating things in the past that you're not necessarily proud of.
How did you learn to grow in those areas? Like, is it something where you're able to connect with a coach? You found books or other resources? Just something that you kind of look back and you did a self-audit? Like, how are some of those things and some of those ways that you were able to grow? What are the resources that you used?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think a lot of it is self-audit, self-discovery, and realizing that's not how I would want to be treated, right? And I feel like I've noticed that more now that I'm really analyzing my journey and really putting things into perspective now in the last year, that when I was having issues and hard times and nobody really ever came to me and said, Dalen, you've performed for a long time. And then boom, all of a sudden there's this email, right? Or this situation that we need to address. What's going on? It was more of, hey, you've performed for us for years. We like you. We don't want to lose you. But hey, guess what? Sign this paper. We're going to write you up kind of thing. Nobody ever really sat there and say, you're a great person. Everybody talks highly about you. We could tell that you care, you're passionate, but what's really going on? And I think that that's something I wish I saw that more in corporate America, of saying, really, people are our biggest asset, right? And it's hard to really lose somebody that's good. But are we really spending time to say, how did we lose? Why did we lose that person? And it might have been those simple moments where it would have just been nice if somebody reached out and say, how you feeling? Are you okay? I noticed this. Let's go grab coffee and make business more personable, right? It doesn't have to just be business, right? These can be our friends. These people can end up being our family, to be honest with you. But I think that we are programmed in corporate America to say, you are an asset. You come here, you do your job. We give you a paycheck to do that job, and that's it. I don't want to have a personal relationship with you.
You opened up a topic that we're going to camp on for a little bit. I hope that's okay.
Okay.
No, I love this. And I think that I'm just coming out of some other conversations where this is becoming really real in my life, and, the importance of the team that you build around you, and showing them that value. Do you feel let's start here. Why do you feel like there is that culture in corporate America?
I think that at the end of the day, especially with big corporate America, shareholders run companies, right? You have the C-suite executives, high level, but at the end of the day, the people that are investing in your companies, the big dollar investors, they essentially want their return, right? And I don't think that we always sit back and realize that there are factors at play in the realm of business, economic factors, natural disasters per se. At the end of the day, we want results, and that's how we're driven in business, right? I am a firm believer that if you're not growing as a business, you are dying type of thing. And I think we get so caught up in the results and the outcomes that we personally want, we do lose that personal touch and that focus, and realizing that results are more important than people, in their mindset, in their health, and their safety. Even though a lot of companies put that on a wall, you write it on a banner, you put it on a wall, you staple it to the lunchroom board. But are we truly living those philosophies? We truly, I think a corporate word that I hear a lot, and I've heard it a lot, is foster, right? We need to foster this. We foster this. In my mind, foster is not the right word to use, because if you look at children in foster homes, it's not permanent, right? They should only be there for a short amount of time before they find that loving family or that great situation. Some are there longer than others, but what about adopt? We need to adopt, right? Because at the end of the day, when you adopt or a child gets adopted, that's for the long haul, right? They found that perfect match and that fit, and we hope it's going to last forever. I would love to see us adopt more of these philosophies and just putting it in fancy lettering on the wall and saying, hey, this is what we believe in type of thing. I think we need more of that in corporate America.
Yeah, perfect. I agree. And as we're thinking about the focus of revenue, right, growth, and we're spending a lot of time on dollars as business owners, and in corporate America, you're focused on, hey, year over year, what was our growth? Are we looking at the wrong KPIs? Like, are there other KPIs that we need to be paying attention to for like personal growth? There's a reason that, we tend to get into the transactional side of leadership. What are some maybe other areas where we could measure growth outside of just numbers?
Yeah. To be honest with you, you brought up a good point. KPIs, right? We all have KPIs, no matter what your business is. We run off of KPIs and metrics. But essentially, do we have people KPIs? Turnover, right? A lot of companies have exit interviews, in surveys. Do we really take those to heart? Are we doing anything about them? Or are we just checking off a list and saying, hey, look at our company. This is what we do. I think finding the right people and good people is hard. It's work to find that perfect fit in that culture. If we're not doing what we need to do to, essentially figure out the situation in terms of how do we get people to stay here and make lifelong careers out of this, because we trained them, we spent a lot of money on them, then we're not taking that seriously. But I would like to see more KPIs based on people, understanding their philosophies, their needs, their wants, retention rates of the company. Or, hey, at the end of the day, are we giving enough information and clarity in right context to our employees so they feel comfortable that they're not going to lose their job a week before Christmas and they were blindsided by it, type of thing. I see that a lot going on, especially on LinkedIn. Next thing you know, mass layoffs. We had no idea. We found out through a Zoom meeting from the CEO or the president of the company this morning, and guess what? We're out of a job, type of thing. That should never happen, because how do you go back and say that people are important to you? They're a true asset when you've done that, right? I can't go and treat my kids bad and then apologize and do it over again. Eventually, they're going to be like, you know what? You're just a bad person. You're a bad dad, kind of thing. You become programmed in thinking a certain way. And I think, in corporate America, there's that stigmatism. We're not loyal to our companies overall because we don't know how they're going to react. We don't know what they're going to do. People have been blindsided. They've been hurt. And I think that's an area that we, as the American corporations, have really struggled with.
So your story talks early on with a high level of accountability where you pushed people, and you held people accountable specific to KPIs. Then through some experiences throughout your personal life and business, obviously, you've learned more empathy over the years. You mentioned even over the last year specifically, you spent a lot of time with self-reflection and learning a lot more about empathy. Is there a place in business for both accountability and empathy?
Absolutely. I think they go hand in hand. I think that if you're people, and there's going to be employees that don't care if you're empathetic or not. When you have to hold them accountable to doing a job, they're not going to like you. If they don't really want to do that job, or they're not a good fit for that job, or they're not performing at the level they should for the job duties and requirements. And that's hard because, I think as a manager, if you are going to be looked at as a leader, not a boss, I think there's a lot of bosses out there, you have to be empathetic. And I think that at the end of the day, most of our employees would say, we want somebody that looks at us as a person, that is empathetic, that sympathizes with our needs, our wants, our aspirations. And they also want us to grow, and they want us to do good things and be able to pay for our child's college, education, or put money away in retirement, and not just hitting a number, not just hitting a growth number, or a quota number, whatever it might be. But I do think there is times where you have to have those serious conversations and say, this is the expectations of the company. They were laid out. They are laid out. We've gone through them and over them. Do you feel like you can meet these expectations? Do you feel like this is a role for you that really fits your personality or your beliefs or your work ethic? It could be a lot of different variables, obviously, but I do think they have to go hand in hand. I really do.
Opportunity for everyone to kind of grow in that space and being empathetic, but then also understanding that accountability is seen throughout the organization too. And, you can be both empathetic as well as hold people accountable in the right way, but it's a difficult balance. And, someone that spends a lot of time personally looking at KPIs, and I'm a numbers person,
Yes.
Analytical. A lot of times I focus a little bit too much sometimes on the number side and the KPI side. And as you've experienced in your journey too, sometimes you need to take a step back and understand that, there might be a reason why that sales guy, has gone through a little slow period. And it's because, maybe something else is going on, and giving them the space and you have that culture in your workplace that they feel okay with bringing that up and talking about it.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're never going to know. I'm curious. I want to take a step back into your story. And we're Dalen. He's got this target out there. I want to make $1 million, right? You've got that financial drive, and you're ready to go. What are some of the financial successes or things that you've been able to hit? You can go into depth or not, just on your journey financially, because that's how it started, right? For you, that was what drove you early on.
Yeah, really, financial successes for me are all based on stability. Right? To be honest with you, I look at it in terms of, if I do a good job, I'm going to make the money that I really rightfully should because I'm doing a good job. I'm providing value to not only the customers, my sales reps, my team, the company and whatnot. And hopefully, in our business, there's usually a quarterly bonus, end of year bonus or whatever. But I have not looked at in terms of financial success, in terms of business as a number, to be honest with you. Um, Somebody told me long ago, and I've had some really good people I've had conversations with that I've worked with all over the years said, Dalen, if you can go out and you can hire, really attract, hire, and develop and retain good employees, you will always have a job. That is a skill set a lot of people don't have. And it really has come true and holding that true. So I know this is a little bit different, but what I look at as financial business success is being able to go and hire and attract really good people, but getting them to stay with me, right? And it's very hard you spend a lot of time developing and training, especially when somebody goes from one industry to another industry that's completely different. You spend a lot of time getting them up to speed and whatnot. All in terms of hoping to keep them on board if they're a good employee. So that's my financial success. My financial success is through my people, right? If I see that they come and say, I just got a new car for the family, right? A really good, stable car, it's reliable. Or hey, my daughter's in third year of med school, right? And I'm able to pay her student loan. So when she graduates, she doesn't have $1 million in debt, right? That's exciting. That's exciting for me. That is what gives me goosebumps, right? And I have had those employees that have come to me and said, hey, you helped me learn a skill set. You helped me believe in myself or come to the realization that maybe I wasn't doing and working to my potential, but now I am, and look at the financial rewards of that. That is what makes me get out of bed every day and do my job, is to work with really good people, people that are empathetic to a lot of situations, because us as managers aren't always going to be perfect, right? It goes both ways, but understand that we're all in it for the same reason, right? To have stability, to have things in life that bring us enjoyment, either tangible or non-tangible assets or whatever. And so that to me is financial success in business. Those are the things I look at as being financially, because if you hire good people, and I've hired a lot of good people, people that have more sales ability in their pinky finger than I do have in my whole body, but that's the key to being a good manager. Find people around you that complement you, but really build a cabinet of successful, well-driven, articulate, very technically skilled people, and you will be successful, and they will be successful. It's that team aspect of it.
Love it. You had that drive of financial, I want to achieve a certain financial number early on. We talked about how that, has changed a little bit over the years. What are some of the current, driving factors for you? It could still be external, financial, cars, homes, whatever. It could be different, pouring into your employee, pouring into your family, pouring into your teams. Just can you paint me a little bit of picture of, over the last year or two, like what had been some of those targets or those things you want to achieve?
Yeah. Well, I mean, really for business, my target is always to sit down, and do annual reviews and really find out what my people want to do, where they want to be financially, right? So it's not just me personally, it's them, and finding out, well, I want to make six figures. Okay, well, you're not there yet. What are we doing to work as a team to get you to that point, right? Personally, when it comes to financial stability, I took a year off, right? I didn't have a paycheck coming in for a year. And I'm lucky I made the decisions I did earlier on when I first got my jobs. And really, I've never been one to drive the fancy car or whatnot. I typically buy a new car, but I have it for 12 years. I love my Jeep. I bought it in 2012 brand new, and I just put 238,000 miles on it, and I still have it. I didn't trade it in. I love that thing. And I have a brand new F-150, and I love that thing, and I'll drive it till it dies too, type of thing. So when it comes to, things that we as society look at, that person's successful. They're driving this, they're doing this. That doesn't interest me, to be honest with you. The only thing that interests me is I have something that's reliable, right? It's safe. It gets my family from point A to point B. It gets me to my sales reps. It gets me on the road to see customers. It gets me to the office type of thing. And I think for me, that works out good. Knowing that I have stability in my life. I don't have to worry about a mortgage payment. I don't have to worry about paying my life insurance policies. I don't have to worry about, essentially putting food on the table, because those are all things that we always had to worry about growing up. Every single week it was an issue. Oh, we're going to be late on the mortgage. Are they going to? Perfect example. We finally got a new vehicle, right? My parents went out, and I don't even know if it was new. I think it was used, but it was this big conversion van, right? It had a TV in there. And I was like, wow, we all loved it. You could lay out the back, and it had a bed. And I sat there one morning, and I saw a truck come and take it away. And I was like, where are they taking our van? It got repossessed. We finally got something that actually started when you turn the key. And so I guess my level of financial rewards, accolades, or what I look at financial is all based on stability. Do I have to go to bed at night worrying about some kind of risk that I could have mitigated? Well, no, I thought about that at an earlier age, and I've mitigated those risks. So essentially I could take a year off and really analyze what my next step of my journey is. The next half of my career is going to look like, and not have to worry about losing my house or, losing something that I really would be detrimental essentially to my family.
Yeah. Making sure that you're, again, setting up your lifestyle with purpose so that like, hey, you can have these events that could come up that are outside of your control, and you're going to be able to handle the response to it. I want to dive a little bit into that year that you've taken, and because a lot of people, are like, no, I don't want to have any gaps in my, career. I'm climbing that corporate ladder. I'm going from VP to president. I'm taking these, steps because I'm chasing that title, and I can't see that gap. Talk to me about why you decided to do that, and kind of what you learned through that process.
Yeah, it was an amazing year. To be honest with you, I learned that I wasn't fulfilling my obligation as a husband and a father, to be honest with you. As much as I've tried to get out of the mindset that my family's number one, in my friends, to be honest with you, I think you need a support group. But those people in my life that I call the closest people that I would give anything for weren't the number one in my life. And that's really what had to change that mindset, is saying, is this is this how you want to live the rest of your life, right? Because what do they say? You have 18 years with your kids, 18 years. They live at your house. They're in high school. Once they move out, I think that essentially a culminating total, you're only going to get a total of one more year with those kids in their lifetime. You're going to get Christmases and Thanksgivings and birthday parties and maybe family trips, but it is only going to be, that scared me. That shook me to my core. And I look back at all of the field trips that I've missed for my daughter just turned 10 on the 28th. And, those field trips, in kindergarten and in first grade and second grade, I never went on them because I had a meeting. I had more priorities in my life besides going those. And now that I took the year off, I went on every single field trip. Not only that, I was able to go to school and go to recess with the kids, go to lunch with the kids. I'd play soccer. The kids would play tag. Ella, my daughter's friends, they like me, type of thing. And so I realized if I build a relationship with my daughter's friends or my son's friends, if something tough happens in their life later on, they're going to come to me and say, hey, I think you need to know about this. This is going on, kind of thing. I wanted to be engaged in my family. I wanted to be engaged in my kids. I wanted to make them top priority. And so for a year, I focused on that. We traveled, we went camping, we went to the UP, we swam in waterfalls, we went fishing. I bought 2 boats. I bought a fishing boat for me and Miles, and if Ella wants to go fishing, And I bought just a regular open bow boat. We live by water, and those are two of the best investments I've ever made. People say, the first day you buy a boat is the most exciting day, and the day you sell it, whatever that saying is another
second best day.
Second best day.
Yeah.
But it was just a game changer for me. I reconnected, and I saw my passion starting to come up. I lost that. I've always been known to be an energetic, passionate, really empathetic person. And I was losing that. I was losing who I've loved in myself and the parts of me that I've loved. There's parts of me that I've hated over the years, but those are the parts I've always loved. I love it when I'm with a sales rep, they say, how many Red Bulls have you drank this morning? Well, I haven't had any, to be honest with you. I'm just excited about going out there and working and doing our job and being successful together. And, if we get our butt kicked today, oh, well, we did it together. But if we get a win today, hey, great, we did it together. And so I needed to find myself again, but I also needed to reconnect with my family. And those are two things I can honestly say in a year I did accomplish. I realize now what I need to get better at and continue to get better at. These are all lifelong journeys. I'm not saying I'm a perfect parent by any means, but I also do have some very close friends and confidants that say, Dalen, you could have gone down a completely different path. You could have done what your parents did. You could have, had the trauma that you did and continued that cycle, but you didn't, I've never raised a hand to my kids, nor will I ever. I've never done that with my wife, nor will I ever. I've had those happen to me. I've had those belts. I've had those spoons. I've had those brushes, and granted, that's a little bit darker story that, is probably for another day. But those are all things at an early age that are scars that you can't get away from. You can try to hide them and cover them up. And that's where work has always been my therapy. I'd work all day long, 10, 12, 13, 14-hour days, come home and I would eat dinner. And the kids, we'd do the homework or read a book. And I couldn't wait till they went to bed, because then I could get back on my computer and finish emails and work till 11 at night. And then I'd get up at 5:30, 6, take a shower, eat breakfast, and head out on the road and do it all over again. That has been my life for the majority of my career. I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop working. I couldn't stop, no matter how many hours, no matter how many emails, no matter how much work I did in a day. It just wasn't fulfilling to me, that I wasn't doing enough. But then I also realized that was my therapy. It was masking other issues that I've dealt with, like we talked about earlier. And I realize now that I have to let that go, right? When you're working, work hard. I still do. And do I pull long hours? Sometimes. But when my daughter has a basketball game, do I go? Absolutely. If she has a field trip, do I go? Absolutely. That is top priority. And I thank God I do understand that now, because I have seen people that never saw that and never did that, and they don't really have relationships with their kids now.
So when I first connected with you about having this conversation, your first response was, yes, but why do you want to talk to me? Why do we want to have this conversation about success? Like, my journey's been an interesting one. And I think what you just reminded me and others, like, I needed to hear that story, right? Like, I needed to hear that reminder of, go home and play that game with your kids.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And don't open up that email, just set it down for now.
Yes.
And you can deal with it later. So thank you for telling that story. And I think, like, that's the type of thing that is going to, have a big impact, as a reminder that work is important. It's important to put your all into what you do, and to do it with drive and passion and things like that, but make sure you have your priorities straight. Now, back to when you decided to take that year and focus on your family and travel and go boating. I love those stories. I love to hear that. Obviously, you have, it's apparent to me that you have a supportive wife in this whole conversation.
Amazing.
I can imagine that conversation with her, talking about, hey, this is what I'm thinking of doing. Maybe it was intentional, maybe it wasn't, maybe it just turned out to be a year, whatever. But can you tell me a little bit about that and like what was her response? And was she excited about it? Was she like, what are you doing here, man? No, we can't do this.
Yeah, it was a tough conversation. It wasn't a tough conversation. It was tougher for me because I didn't know how she would respond. The response was overwhelmingly positive. And my wife has always been a huge supporter of me. To be honest with you, she is the better half. And when I say that, she is the better half. And anybody that knows me personally or knows her personally in our friend group would say she's the better half. But long story short, she said, when you get married, it's for richer or poorer, sickness and in health, good times, bad times, you signed up for that, kind of thing. And she said, I'd rather take this time and enjoy it, and reconnect with the kids and make sure that you're here. You're here, not only here financially, which she said, you've done a great job. You've done a great job to provide for this family. We live in, we built a brand new house. We've always had reliable cars. We've always had food on the table. We have investments and retirements and life insurance, whatever. But I want you to be here, right? I want you to be engaged. And our kids deserve that. I deserve that as a spouse. And so, we had to figure things out. How is this going to work? What does it look like? How do we maximize this time, right? Because she is a teacher, which is great. She had the summer off. So most people don't have that luxury where if I'm going to be off, you're going to be off. Like the summer was amazing. It was the best summer of my life, to be honest with you. And we jam-packed every day. We had something going on. If it wasn't beach, travel, boating, whatever. So we made the most of it. It's a summer I will never forget. But that was the biggest thing, is saying, I want you to be here tomorrow, a month from now, a year from now. And to be honest with you, I got to the point that it did get dark. There was times where it got very dark. My family and my wife have saved my life. I will always be in debt for them for that. They have given me a life that I, for most part, don't believe I ever deserved, to be honest with you. But now I realize they have given me a life that is worth living and worth working hard for, but also working hard for, and not just the business aspect, which I've always done, and the financial aspect, but worth living and supporting two amazing children that have deserved not 70% of me or 50% of me, but they deserve 100% of me. And so what I started realizing too, and this will scare you once you start thinking about, how many times do you have your kids come to you and say, hey, this, or ask you a question, and you're caught up in an email. You're caught up in, what do I got going on tomorrow? Hey, I might lose this big customer. What are we going to do to make up $2.5 million worth of business? And you, oh yeah, push them off. That means something to them. Even though we don't realize it, that is a little piece that they are attached to. The more we do that, we might do that every day and not realize it. Well, you did it 365 days of that year. Well, then you did it next year, and multiplying, that stuff adds up. And that's where we really need to figure out, are we that parent that we always wanted, or we should be, or are we that parent that we don't understand that we aren't really, and we have to take self-accountability kind of thing. So that was the biggest thing. My wife was completely on board with it. I think that if you ask her today, she said, I would have done that deal 100 times over kind of thing. We were in a position where we weren't going to lose anything. We weren't going to lose our house. Yeah. Everybody wants a paycheck. It didn't have that, but we made things work. You figure things out, and you cut some things here and you do some things here. But what I got from that, what she got from that, but what my kids got from that year, I think we all are going to remember for a lifetime.
I love hearing that story and the support that your wife gave you in that conversation and in that phase of life, and really encourage you, let's do it, because she understood, and she was probably seeing it throughout the years of like, hey, we need to make a change. And this is really important. And, having that difficult phase or conversation, she can look back at and say, well, I'm glad that we did that, because Dalen's turned into this type of dad for the kids.
Yeah.
That, maybe we wished he would have been more earlier on, but now he's here now. What other ways, when you mentioned showing up you're showing up for your kids, not just with time,
Yep.
but like you've probably had to make changes in other areas of your life to be able to show up to them. I know that you got into doing more on the health side, getting into the gym, doing more things like that. Can you tell me a little bit about how that's helped you show up?
Absolutely phenomenal. So my schedule, Monday through Friday, if I'm not traveling, if I'm out of town, traveling, hotel, wherever, I'm in the gym with a workout partner. Accountability partner is absolutely huge. I get up at 4:20 in the morning. I drive to the gym. I usually get there about 4:45, wait for them to open up at 5. And we're very consistent. And we have been for a year. Where it all started is, once again, a perfect prime example of being there and listening to your kids. I love snuggling my kids before they fall asleep, right? It's a quiet time. It's that time where you can really connect and put your heads together and rub noses and do all those things that make them feel good, but make you feel good. And maybe it's just have a conversation. My daughter looked at me, this is over a year ago, and she said, "You're a big daddy." And I said, "Well, I've always been a kind of a husky big guy, She's like, "Yeah, but you're too big of a daddy." And so that was the eye opener for me. I get what she's saying. Like, you know what? You're overweight, like scary overweight, too overweight. And so that was a situation where I said something needed to change, to be honest with you. The snacking, the bad foods, the sugars and stuff. And granted, I still, I've gotten better at it, but really getting an accountability partner in the gym, working out. We worked out this morning. But long story short is finding somebody that supports you in that journey as well. So we're on that journey together. But I look at proteins, I cutting out sugars, looking at, even the way white bread. I haven't had white bread in forever. I eat sourdough, kind of thing. So I'm not a nutritionist by any means, but I'm working to get better. But really my goal, I set goals for myself in the gym, and one of them was to get back up to benching 315 pounds. When I first went in the gym, I didn't realize how much muscle I've lost. I started out with 135, and I'm like, oh, this is work. I'm like, what is going on? This was like, I could curl this, when I was younger. And so in a year, it was a couple weeks ago, I got up to 315, and I did it like 6 times. I'm like, oh my God. So these are results, right? So what I started realizing is, the results, they can't just be business results, right? We hit a quota, we hit our growth numbers, our projections. Guess what? January 1st, we're doing it all over again. You have to set personal goals for yourself. And they don't have to be financial goals. They could be, health goals, right? But I did realize that my life is worth living. And if I don't do something now, I just turned 40 this summer. If I don't do something now, is it going to be too late, right? But also what I realize is my kids are in sports. My daughter, Ella, is a phenomenal athlete. Like, she's got the athletic gene. I have to be there with her. My son, now 6 years old, is in wrestling. Ella's in wrestling. I wrestled on varsity for 4 years. I got to get on that mat now. I got to get on my hands and knees. I got to roll around. I got to help them develop those skills, right? And so if I'm struggling to do that, like, how much help am I going to be at the end of the day? And so my kids have motivated me to really look at my health as a priority. And I haven't for years because I didn't have time to. We all say we don't have time to. But yeah, February, I think 26 will be 1 year. And I've drastically seen improvement. My doctor's seen improvement. But once again, it's a journey. It's not something you could do for a year and say, but this, especially after 40, we lose, I don't know what it is, 10% of our muscle mass every single year. Just like customers in business, you're projected to lose 10, 15% of your business every single year through attrition. It's going to happen. Same thing with our bodies. They're not made to last forever. And if we don't do something about it, then eventually that pyramid's going to fall. It's not going to last. So that's one area that I've really kind of focused on, but also with sports, right? I didn't have somebody throwing a baseball with me when I was younger. I didn't have somebody making sure that I was a coachable athlete, right? I didn't start playing sports until I was in 7th, 8th grade, to be honest with you. And I wasn't even going to play, but the coaches came to my parents and said, hey, your son's a big boy. Like, he should be wrestling. He should be playing football. And my parents like, I don't know. And so they said, well, this isn't an option. He's going to play, right? And so that's how I got into sports. I played baseball when I was younger, but being there for the kids and making sure they're listening to their coaches, making sure they're being respectable to other teammates, people that their opponents are, those are all transferable skills later in life? Are they going to be employable people, young employable people? Are they going to listen to instructions? Are they going to be able to handle adversity? These are all attributes that I think sports really attribute to it. And this is an area that I am passionate about. So I'll be able to obviously help them in that journey, but I can't do it if I'm 150 pounds overweight to do that journey. So it's been an exciting transition.
No, yeah. And I love that you've been able to take some of your time that you've focused on work, and not that you're not focusing, when you're locked in, but you're also understanding priorities and saying, hey, when I'm with my kids, I want to spend time with them, but I want it to be a high level of intentional time.
Yes.
And to do that, I have to have energy. I know that there's a lot of times I think back in my life, it's like you got get home at the end of the day and you're just exhausted. And sometimes it's like, I know I'm here with you, but I'm just tired. I'm exhausted. But now flipping that and getting exercise and nutrition into your schedule allows you to have that energy that can carry over into the end of the day. It's not just I'm spending time with you. Now I can go out and we can, jump on the mat, or we can go and we can play catch because dad's got the energy to get off the couch and go do those things with you, right? So love that. And again, intentionality with setting up those morning routines that allow you then to be able to show up for your kids in the evenings.
Yes.
Perfect. I think a lot of people can relate to and see some opportunities for changes in that area as well. Now, I know you're coaching with your kids, you're investing in them. How else and your team members, are there others that you've taken the opportunity to coach into or, mentor, or any of those aspects of your life? Are you in that phase of your journey?
I have had situations where I think, part of my job is mentoring, right? If you can't be a people manager and a leader and an effective one and a good one, if you don't take that seriously in your role, right? Development. And there might be somebody that has been doing the same job or knows that field for 30 years and somebody that just got into it 3 weeks ago. At the end of the day, we can all develop and grow. And one thing that is funny, I've had sales reps over the years saying, Dalen, what you're telling me, I know this. And I'm like, well, I'm not saying you don't know it. I'm just wondering why you're not doing it, kind of thing. So, and so those are the aha moments that you have with definitely sales reps and stuff like that. But there are times where people have come to me and said, Dalen, and talked about the journey and said, you spent and focused more the last year and a half in your family. It's noticeable, right? I'm in a situation now where we're starting to have kids, and I don't want to miss that. I've heard you talk about, going and spending 2 days in a hospital and going back to work, Wednesday to Friday. I don't want to do that. And nor should you do that. This is where I failed. Don't make the same mistakes. Right. And so I don't know how many people, it might be none, it might be one. I don't know how many people I've truly affected. But I pray that somewhere down the line, I have affected somebody in a positive, where what I said and mentored and coached them, they said, wow, this has made a difference, type of thing. And it has affected their life for a positive. I pray, and that's something I think about every single day. I like to talk, and I have a lot to talk about, obviously. But really what's the value on that? Is somebody going to change their mindset to say, hey, you know what? I listened to your message. You struggled. You didn't take your kids as a priority. My kid is 3 months old. I want to make sure I learn from that, and has that happened? I don't know. I like to think it does. Yeah, it does, type of thing. So
I'm sure it has.
Hope so.
Yeah, definitely. And thinking through as we wrap up some of this conversation, thanks again for coming on and chatting. It's been a pleasure getting to know a little bit more of your story, and I'm sure that some of the things that you've talked about with putting family first and taking that year off, we're going to be able to draw a lot of and make some changes and have an impact. As you look back over the years, what would you say is the most successful thing that you've accomplished?
In my lifetime?
In your lifetime. In the last 40 years, personal, professional.
Yeah.
Give a couple of different examples. It could be family related, could be financial related. Just like as we're getting closer to understanding Dalen's definition of success, can you give us an example of maybe what you would say some of the most successful things that you've been able to accomplish are?
Yeah, I mean, that's easy for me. That's the easiest question. My kids. My kids are the number one success story in my life. in two aspects. They're amazing. My kids are kind, they're gentle, they're everything that I hoped and dreamed that they would be. In they're my biggest asset. I would give up everything I have to make sure that they are healthy and safe and happy, without a doubt, not even a question. They're my legacy, to be honest with you. So at the end of the day, I'm the most proud because I was a part of creating something. Two amazingly beautiful, talented, smart people, and they impress me every day. They challenge me every day, to be honest with you, especially Ella. She really challenges me. But they are the ones that have made my life worth living. The second is my wife. I am blessed to have married such a wonderful, beautiful, smart, empathetic, and really, to be honest with you, a patient person. You can only imagine you have to be very patient to be married to me. But God has blessed me with that, and a wonderful family and a healthy family. I am a firm believer that job skills or home skills drive job skills. I do. I'm a firm believer in it. When I'm hiring and recruiting, those are things you can't ask those questions, but you also can do ride-alongs and you can ask, other questions, and people like to talk and they might tell you something. But at the end of the day, if your home life is wholesome and it's happy and the kids are happy and, you're affectionate and loving, I think that really transfers over to the business side of it. If things are chaotic and there's fighting, because I grew up in that, I think that has a very big effect, a profound effect on how you're going to perform in the realm of things, the business culture, whatever. But when it comes to things I'm very proud of, I'm very proud of, our house. I grew up in a trailer, to be honest with you. I get to go to a house that I built in 2014, and it's everything I ever wanted. And it's comfortable, and it's a good working environment. And I was lucky enough to buy 5 acres, wooded lawn in Grand Haven Township, which is very hard to do nowadays. But I've been blessed. That is something I drive home every day, and I don't take for granted, and I never will, because when you grow up with a leaky roof or pipes freezing because, you live in a trailer and you don't have water, and when you do, it's cold because the water heater doesn't work. Those are things that you just don't take for granted, or you shouldn't, and I never will take for granted. But, really when it comes to success, or things I'm proud of, things I'm proud of, family number one, but also my friends. To be honest with you, I jeopardized my friendships for so long because, once again, they were just like my family. They were number 2 priority. And it wasn't until the last year and a half that I realized how important it is to have that support base. People you could talk to that really genuinely care about your well-being. And for me, if I'm not talking to somebody, or if I'm not saying stuff and we're in a group setting, there's something going on there, right? And I have close enough friends that realize that and say, hey, why are you talking? Why, they become accustomed to it. Well, I'm having, this issue, whatever. Well, let's talk about it. And so surround yourself with people that genuinely care about you. They're not your friends because of a benefit. They're not your friends because you have a boat. They're not your friends because of some tangible asset you have. They're your friends because they care and love who you are as a person, no matter your best times and your worst times or your faults or whatever. They're there to support you, and you're there to support them. And you build that bond and relationship. I lost that for over a decade. And really, the last couple of years, I've gotten that back. And it's been something that I can only say that I'm very proud of having. And it's been a success in my life.
Thank you for sharing that. We're going to dive into your formal definition of success here.
Yes.
And now that we've got an understanding of your background, kind of your journey, where you've come from, some of the things that you've already described as success in your life, and some of the challenges that you've experienced that all lead up into kind of this definition. So if we had to, grab a piece of paper and write down Dalen's definition of success, what would that be?
Oh, we would need a whiteboard. I mean, it'd have to be a very big piece of paper, because I think that changes. I think my earlier on success, I think it's very self-evident that when we talked about it, it was financial. It was all based on financial. My success, it was how much money can I bring in every single year? Okay, last year I brought in this. Okay, I need to add on, a couple, zeros or whatever. And so that was really what my measure was, success was. Well, I think my success measure now is really changed. It's been more of stability. It's been more of knowing that you've made the right decisions to make sure that your family is set up now, but also when you're gone, right? Are they going to have the chances? And I think now it's more important than ever because, look at house prices, right? These kids are graduating college, they're getting jobs, and really, wages haven't gone up that much, but 7%, and inflated home prices, all they want to do is buy their first home. That was the most exciting thing I ever did. That first home, when me and Amanda, we had no furniture. We moved into a completely empty house. I think we got a pizza and we grabbed a couple of lawn chairs from my parents, and that was our furniture. So that's the biggest thing, is success has changed a lot for me, going from financial to more stability. But really now it's being happy and being fulfilled. It's that feeling that, that sense of accomplishment, not just with work, but really, like we talked about, family, looking back at it. And, I have a really good example. So the last couple of years I've done the Muskegon Pub Pedal. I don't know if you've ever done that. It's a great benefit. I didn't go there to understand the benefit of what it is, but essentially it's an organization that raises money to support families that have somebody in their family with cancer, right? To help pay for expenses, medical bills. It's a really great cause. But I started going there for the social aspect. Friends are like, hey, let's do the pub pedal. It's awesome. We'll go all these. And so it wasn't until last year that a couple close friends of mine, my support group, had a close friend that was one of the people that were, in that as a cancer, a person with cancer. And long story short, the gentleman ended up passing away, right? And so my story and what I'm concluding on this is I didn't know him, but I started reading the Facebook post, and I read a couple of them, and I was in awe. The in-depth amount of detail that people were leaving, right? And you could tell that this person, I think his name was Brett Belmerez. I think he lived in Muskegon or Norton Shores. But the in-depth amount that people were leaving on there, I couldn't stop reading. I got to the point where I was almost mad that I never met this person. Like, I'm like, this person's amazing. Well, my friends went to the funeral and they said that the line of cars was down the road, right? There was standing room only. That, in my opinion, is success. That is the ultimate measure of success. This person lived such a great life and affected so many people in such a positive aspect that his memory, people will be talking about him for generations and how great he was and how much he impacted their life. That's what I want. I want to look back and say, did you live a life worth living? Did you focus on the right things that really made a difference? Because I don't remember what I made in 2009. And guess what? When I took that year off, my kids didn't realize I wasn't getting a paycheck. They don't know what I make, nor do they care. It's not important to them, right? What's important to them is that I'm there for them and I'm supporting them and I'm their biggest fan. And so at the end of the day, and that's not only just with your kids, that's in life in general. I need to do a better job of making sure that I'm leaving a legacy, not only for my family, but for the people around me to say, you know what, Dalen was worth knowing and he was worth being friends with. And we had great conversations. And if people didn't know me, I want them to look at the way I looked at him and say, man, that I missed out on a great opportunity. I wish I would have met that guy. Kind of thing. That in my book is success.
Well, thank you for sharing. And it has been a pleasure getting to know you and becoming your friend over these years and getting the chance to, play pickleball together or do whatever. And, thanks again for coming on today and sharing your journey as well as your definition of success.
Thank you, Stephen. This has been a blast. It's a true honor to be here and can't thank you enough.
Yep.